it should be all right. All right, well, do you want me to move forward? Okay. Okay. Is that better? All right. Well, thank you for having me today. It's lovely to be here with everybody. And it's awesome to be here in the United States for the first time. When I left Perth on Wednesday, it was over 30 degrees in Celsius. I'm not sure what that is in Fahrenheit, but it was very warm. And so come to the opposite temperatures over here, and yeah, it's been awesome. So I grew up on a lifestyle centre property where my parents work, and they run a health retreat there with other staff. And so I was very blessed to grow up knowing or being taught a lot about the laws of health. And so I just want to share with you some of the things that I've learnt as I've studied, and also things that I've learnt from my parents, and yeah, how it's been a blessing to me. So we're going to be talking today about New Start. Who's heard of New Start? Yep. So God's 8 laws of health, which is given to us to show us how we can live our lives to the full. So I want you to have a look at these dishes, and I'm going to ask you to give me an estimate of how many calories you think is in each one. So let's start with the sausages and gravy mashed potato. How much did you say? 1,100? Good guess. How much, sorry? 25? Oh, 3,500. Okay, that's very high. All right. 843, actually. So a little bit lower than what you guys were guessing, but still quite high. What about the cinnamon roll? Yeah. This one's 420. So also still quite high. And what about the coffee? 200? 290. All right. Okay. How long do you think it would take to burn off 843 calories when you're exercising? 20 minutes, hour and a half? It would take you an hour and 20 minutes if you were running, and 2 hours and 35 minutes if you were walking. And the cinnamon scroll, you'd have to run for 40 minutes or walk an hour and 17 minutes. And for the coffee, you'd have to run for about half an hour or walk for 53 minutes. So that's a long time just for one plate or one cup. And so we can see that there's not 24 hours in the day. There's not enough time to work off an unhealthy diet. So it's important that we know what is the foods that we can eat, which will actually nourish our bodies, and we don't have to compensate for it. And God has given us a great diet which we can eat. And so we're going to be looking at our first law of health today, which is nutrition. So God created the world, and he created us perfect. And he's given us the laws, special principles which are right from his word, which shows us how we can be restored back into the image which he created us to be. So it's his original design, and how he's given us these laws to try and restore us to be back into that original design. Now I know the words are quite small, so I will try and read some of them. We won't get through it all, but so we're going to start by talking a little bit about cancer. So cancer is a global leading cause of death, as most of us would realise, and cancer-related deaths are estimated to almost double from 9.5 million per year in 2018, going up to 16.5 million by 2040. So that's a huge increase. It's pretty sobering. So more than 1 in 3 people will be diagnosed with cancer in their lifetime. That's what the statistics tell us. And cancer rates tend to increase among populations with higher education standards of living. Why do you think that might be? More money? Right? Yeah, that's right. Eating out more. And maybe sometimes it can be related to a more sedentary lifestyle as well. Yes. That's what we're going to talk about next. Yeah. So cancer in the Greek means crab. So most of us know what it is, but we don't know what it does and how it comes about. So cancer is actually an outside invader, and it occurs when our cells behave badly. So when a DNA cell, which controls cell reproduction, becomes damaged, that's when it becomes cancerous. So something happens to the cell to cause it to become damaged. So when a cell becomes damaged, that's when it becomes cancerous. So these cells, which are damaged, they become hypersensitive to growth factors, so things like proteins, which cause cells to grow and reproduce. Now, this means that a cancerous cell can be in the body, but it might not reproduce and it might not grow if the right conditions aren't given to it to grow and reproduce. So if it's fed the right protein, that is what is going to cause the cancerous cell to reproduce. If that makes sense. What damages it? Well, sometimes it can be hereditary, like it can be passed down, and sometimes it can be a gene mutation. Yeah, and then sometimes it is an unhealthy lifestyle. So it can be a few different causes. Yeah.
Something starts something. Just like they say that the atheist says that the world started with a bang, but they can't tell me what started that bang.
Mm-hmm.
So when I ask questions, I'm looking for where it originated from, what started up. If you don't, or they don't have that information, then fine. But I know something starts something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that is the basis on which I'm asking my question. Okay, if bad cells cause cancer, okay, what caused them to get bad?
Right. Well, it can be when you aren't feeding the cell the right nutrition and the right things that it needs to be a healthy cell. So, like I said, it can be from when you aren't living a healthy lifestyle. But then it can also be something that's passed down. So I don't know all of the answers, like what causes a cell to be damaged, but I do know that it can be caused by an unhealthy lifestyle. Yeah, I'm not a doctor, but yeah, just things that I've learned, and yeah, we're all learning as we go. All right, so some of you might have heard of the study of epigenetics, which tells us that a gene can be turned on and off. So you might have a gene that could become cancerous if it's given the right environment, or it might just stay dormant, and that's not dangerous to you if it's staying dormant. So we're going to look at what is it that turns a cancer gene on and what might leave it dormant. So genetics only determine 2 to 3% of the risk. So that's a very small amount. And up to 1/3 of all cancers can be attributed to diet. Now, the right diet actually prevents many cancers and can be the key to turning on and off existing cancers in the body. Has anyone here heard of the China study? Yeah, it's a very famous study that conducted landmark research, and one of the most comprehensive studies ever done on health and nutrition. And it specifically looked at the dangers of a diet that was high in animal protein, and also the benefits of a whole foods plant-based diet. So animal protein and plant protein have a different effect on the body. So it's two different types of protein. Now, animal protein is the most efficient at growing cells. So the problem is that it doesn't differentiate between healthy and cancerous cells. So animal protein will feed both types. And so cancer cells specifically are fed by animal protein. Plant protein, however, although it has all the essential amino acids and they're absorbed in different ratios. So the fact that they're absorbed in different ratios means that the protein from a plant is not as easily accessed. It's not as easily used. So these are called limiting amino acids. And they're actually a protective factor. The fact that your cell can't absorb it as easily means that it's not going to overfeed the cell. And so cancer cells are unable to be fed by plant protein, which means that if you have a cell that might be damaged, but you're eating a plant-based diet, you're less likely to develop cancer because you're not feeding those cells, which are fed by animal proteins. So basically, when we are feeding our cells, we can choose if we're feeding those cells or not. So what is the right diet? So diet is one of the major influences that impacts whether our genes are turned on and off. So our body actually tells us what the right diet is. As we can see, as we talked about how animal protein actually feeds cancerous cells, all of these cancers, which are listed on the screen, can be attributed to an animal protein-based diet. So mostly meats, which have been highly processed, poultry, and dairy products. And over 250 studies have been conducted on actually Seventh-day Adventist culture and studied because Seventh-day Adventists have the health message, and so it has there's a lot of research done on SDAs to see how a plant-based diet actually protects us from getting different types of cancer. So in the Bible, a plant-based diet is actually associated with longevity. As you can see, the red line, the longevity of man dramatically drops. And this is when a lot of meat eating was actually introduced, because we know that a lot of plants were destroyed at the flood, and the diet became more so on the side of meat. Whereas before the flood, you could see that longevity was much higher, and a plant-based diet was more common. So again, there are many studies that show that eating a plant-based diet, which is also known as being vegan, can prevent and reverse cancer. So there's a couple of studies on the screen about early prostate cancer being reversed by what we put in our mouth, and also eating lots of fruits and vegetables can add up 3 to 4 years of your life, which is pretty awesome. So the Bible, something's happened there. The Bible is actually God's health book. So God has provided right in the beginning in Eden what our bodies need most. So I'm just going to read through the Bible passages. So in Genesis chapter 1, verse 29 and 31, he says, God said, "See, I have given you every herb that yields seed, and every tree whose fruit yields seed. To you it shall be for food." Then God saw everything that he had made, and indeed it was very good. Continuing on to Genesis 3:17 to 19, it said, "Cursed is the ground for your sake. In toil you shall eat of it all the days of your life. Both thorns and thistles it shall bring forth for you, and ye shall eat the herb of the field." So in the first verse, it says God's given us herbs that yield seed. So this is grains, seeds, and legumes. And then he also says every tree whose fruit yields seeds. This is our fruit and nuts. And then at the bottom, the herb of the field, this is vegetables. And it's interesting that vegetables were actually introduced after the fall, and they have specific healing properties in them, which is, after sin, what do we need? We need healing from God. So he's also given this to us in our diet. And this diet provides us with everything that we need: carbohydrates, proteins, fats, vitamins, minerals. And I think the bottom line is, I know sometimes it's difficult to get all the different types of plant-based foods that we need. So we just do it the best that we can, and God helps us with that. So choose what is simplest and freshest and least processed. Mm.
That version says for food, but when I look at most people who are accustomed to the regular diet that they are grown up with, always look for meat. But when you read this, you see that the fruits and nuts and vegetables, everything is already your meat.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to look for anything else.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Different versions. I guess that's what they do. Okay, go ahead.
Yes, he's given us everything that we needed right in the beginning. All right, so just finishing up on this law of health, and also an important principle is eating for strength. So what is the purpose of eating? It's for nourishment. It's fueling our body. And so as Christians, we need to live by principle and not feeling. So we know that appetite is such a huge problem these days. But God has said in Ecclesiastes chapter 10, verse 17, "Blessed are you, O land, when your king is the son of nobles and your princes feast at the proper time for strength and not for drunkenness." So to be faithful with what God has given us, we need to be faithful in the little things, including our diets. So now is a time when we need our minds and our bodies to be strong. We know that we're getting closer to the time of Jesus coming. We're going to have to be making decisions to stand for him. We want to do everything that we can to be ready for that time. And sometimes, I know, especially if we're transitioning from maybe a diet that is primarily animal foods to a plant-based diet, it's hard to know what to cook and how to prepare something that actually tastes good. But there's a promise in the Spirit of Prophecy that says God will give his people ability and tact to prepare wholesome food without these things, so without the animal products, which that's a promise for each one of us. All right, moving on. What is the most important healthy lifestyle choice that we can make? Well, that one's important, but I know they're all important, but there's some which they high up there. So exercise. Exercise is one of the most important healthy lifestyle choices that we can make. So maintaining physical activity. It helps to prevent, manage, and reverse many different lifestyle diseases. It increases our longevity and our quality of life. And there are many ways of staying physically active. So often we think of people who are going to the gym or they're going out for a run. Some of us can't do that, but there's actually many different things we can do, like gardening, swimming, even housework, horse riding. There's lots of different ways. So the important thing is that you do it often and that you do it vigorously so that your heart rate can actually increase. All right. So now, obviously, a healthy lifestyle does include the whole program. So although exercise is one of those most important choices, in order to get the benefits of exercise, we also need to pair it with good nutrition, which we have already talked about. So remember, you can't work off an unhealthy diet. It would just take all of your time. So in Genesis chapter 2 and also chapter 3, it says, "The Lord God then took the man and settled him in the Garden of Eden to cultivate and care for it." So he gave man a work to do, which included exercise. And it says, "Cursed is the ground for your sake." So it was actually a good thing. God knew that it was going to be a good thing that man had to work in the soil. So in the sweat of thy face thou shalt eat bread. So it's for our own sake that we live an active life and engage in useful labour. So we know that in the beginning, man's first occupation was in the garden, tilling the soil. And the curse of the soil was not a curse for man, but rather a blessing. Physically, mentally, and spiritually, our body is benefited by exercise. All right, so there was a pretty cool study done, a 21-year longitudinal study, which means it was looked at over 21 years. These participants were called the ever and the never runners. So some of them ran for exercise all the time, and some of them never ran or exercised at all. So the data showed that exercise is critical to health. The ever runners, in comparison to the never runners, showed increased or improved aerobic capacity, better heart health, increased bone mass, less inflammation, less physical disability, improved thinking and learning and memory. So even our minds are positively impacted by exercise, and they lived significantly longer, which is really interesting. And they continue to have improved health and longevity even when they converted to less vigorous activity. So maybe as they got a bit older and they couldn't run as much and as often, they still enjoyed the benefits of that later on in life. So 1 minute of exercise actually can be converted to 2 minutes of longevity, which is pretty awesome. But what is our greatest excuse of not exercising? That's right, we don't have time. Studies have shown that the average American spends 2 hours and 45 minutes a day in front of the TV, which I feel like might be more now. And it wouldn't be just America, it'd be Australia and many other countries as well. And only 18 minutes of exercise a day. So we do have time. It's just how do we prioritize our time? Physical activity can prevent many different types of cancers. Active breast cancer patients were able to reduce the increase and reoccurrence of breast cancer by 40%. And there is a benefit, a special benefit of increasing your physical activity after the age of 50. So those of us who are a little bit older can really reap the benefits of physical activity. It can add up to 2 to 4 years to your life. But studies have shown, they also show that you can remain disability free for an extra 5.7 as well. So you're adding that time to your life plus you're maintaining health during that time as well. So how do we optimize the benefits of exercise? Now, Dr. Neil Nedley, he talked a lot about this, about when and how we should exercise. So the best time to exercise is when you're fasting, so in the morning before breakfast. Now, I know not all of us can get out and do our exercise then, but this is just saying when is the optimum time. So this is when the air is the freshest. It actually improves your metabolism, helps you build more muscle, increases your immunity, and also it helps diabetics' sensitivity to insulin throughout the day when they get vigorous aerobic exercise in the morning. How long should I exercise for? So at the very least, it's been shown benefits from 8 minutes of vigorous exercise, but obviously we want to do as much as we possibly can. But some of us definitely do have more limited time than others with work and different things, but obviously we just do the best that we can. Optimal is 1 hour of vigorous exercise. And it's recommended that you do no more than 3 if you're doing vigorous exercise, because if you do too much, then actually you're overloading your body. You're stressing it out, which then has the opposite effect. So we did talk a little bit about this earlier. Maybe you can't jog or you can't swim, but remember that simple walking is actually one of the best exercises. Now, I know sometimes in this weather it can be hard to get out and walk, but you can always walk around your house as well. Walking has been shown to enhance blood circulation, and when a person is able to exercise, like walking, blood circulation increases 10 to 20 times more, which causes a sufficient supply of nutrients and oxygen to be delivered to every organ of the body. If a person remains inactive, then the body and the mind becomes weak because they're not actually getting those nutrients, which is circulated by exercise. So there are actually more people dying for lack of exercise than for overworking their body in physical activity. Okay, moving on. I know it's a lot of information and it's after lunch, so we'll just do our best. Okay, what thing is able to reduce and improve most diseases? What is the product that is just as effective at guarding your heart health as maintaining an ideal body weight, reducing high blood pressure, reducing cholesterol, and stopping smoking? And it's not a tablet. Water, that's right. Water is our next law of health. Now, God provided an ample supply of water for man right from the beginning. It says in Genesis chapter 2, verse 10, "And a river went out of Eden to water the garden, and from thence it was parted and became into 4 heads." So there was plenty of water around. And there's this amazing quote in the Ministry of Healing, which says, "In health and in sickness, pure water is one of heaven's choicest blessings. Its proper use promotes health. It is the beverage which God provided to quench the thirst of animals and men. Drunk freely, it helps to supply the necessities of the system and assists nature to resist disease. The external application of water is one of the easiest and most satisfactory ways of regulating the circulation of blood." That's a good question. I'm not sure. That's a good question, though.
Because when you look at the benefits of water, if it does so much, then I tend to think that there is something more than H2O in it for the results that it's giving. It's just a question that
Yeah, no, it's definitely something interesting to ponder. I know that when used externally, I guess it's not so much also that's what's in the water, but when it's used at different temperatures, that promotes circulation as well.
I know what the external part is, but there are different impurities on the external part that it washes away. And to a certain extent, like when you look at a dead body, like in Leviticus, when it talks about being unclean, if you touch the dead body or different stuff like that, then from the time a body dies, it starts decomposing in whatever manner it is. So the idea that when we're alive, we're bathing every day means that we're removing certain things that accumulate on the body that are not necessary. And then probably it helps our pores to breathe better or whatever it does. But it does something. So that part I can understand. But internally, I tend to think that there is something that I don't know if they don't want to pursue it. But
Yeah, I don't know. Like, we'll get onto it as well, but our body is made up of a certain percentage of water. And again, I'm not sure why God made it like that. But obviously, if that percentage decreases, then whatever it is that's in the water, then our body isn't able to access it. But yeah, it's a good question. Yeah. Things always get worse when we try to improve what God's done. All right, so we have a study here, which was done by the American Journal of Epidemiology about death from coronary heart disease, and was actually studying the impact that water had on coronary heart disease. So it showed that drinking 5 or more cups per day actually cuts the risk of death by coronary heart disease in half. And that's only 5 cups, and we'll talk a bit more later about how much we should be drinking. But as you can see, those who drank 2 or less cups of water had a much higher risk of death by coronary heart disease. So Dr. Jacqueline Chan, she said that basically not drinking enough water can be as harmful to your heart as smoking, and which is quite sobering when you think about how easy it is sometimes to go throughout the day and forget to drink enough water. So dehydration actually increases blood stickiness, which increases the risk of the blood clotting. The risk increases for participants who, well, in this study, the risk increased for participants who drank anything other than pure water. So this included tea, coffee, sodas, and fruit juices as well. So this is because sugary and carbonated and caffeinated beverages actually rob the body of water. So the body calls more water to flush out those things from the system when you've been drinking them. So people think that, oh, I can just drink juice. I had a friend who drank only juice for like a month, and she thought that I was okay because it's liquid and it was fruit juice. But actually your body needs water to be able to flush out the excess sugar because fruit juice is highly concentrated. So the same with tea and coffee and sodas. It actually dehydrates you even more. So even if you're meeting your minimum intake of water, if you're also drinking these other drinks, you're going to be dehydrated because it's taking water from your body.
If you, like for example, I know we are not supposed to drink water after we eat. If you drink water after you eat, does the body assimilate it as though it's a beverage? I know it dilutes your digestive juices to break down the food, but as you mentioned that about drinking juice alone, then I tend to think that if in case when you eat food, you drink water with it, then the mixture there should appear like a beverage because of all what you ate, and then it becomes a big pot of liquid.
That's an interesting point, yeah. Mm. Mm-hmm. I think if you're drinking extra water, as long as when you're having fruit juice, yeah. Yeah. Mm. Mm.
different parts of your body, whatever is there, becomes a little more concentrated, then it will cause a sickness. And sometimes the doctor will tell you go home and drink water because that's what you need. And then when you drink the water, it liquefies it, and then the problem is gone.
Yeah.
And you see a miracle in water, whereas it was too concentrated in your body, and all you needed is to dilute it a little.
Yeah, that's right. All right. So how much water should I drink per day? So as we can see, our body is, well, when we're adults, our body is about 60% water, but when children are young, it's a much higher percentage. And the brain is about 75% water. So that's 3/4% of water. That's a lot of water for our brains. So you can think about what's going to happen to your brain when you're dehydrated. So dehydration actually causes your whole brain to slow down completely. Now it's recommended, there is a recommended number of glasses to drink per day, but we know that our glasses can be all different sizes. So one way to work out how much you individually need is by multiplying your weight by 0.033, and that will tell you your water in litres. So I'm not sure if you guys use litres. Do you use litres or gallons? Okay, so you have to multiply it and then convert litres to gallons. That will tell you. So like even adults, because we're all different shapes and sizes, we can't say, oh, every single adult needs to drink this much water. Like my brother is 6'7" and he needs a lot more water than I do. Yeah, so another important principle is to drink to the conditions. So if you're sitting in an office all day, then you are not going to need as much water as somebody who is working outside and sweating all of their water out. So just remember that if you're exercising, if you're in warmer temperatures, if you have a fever, you're going to need more than what the recommended amount for your body is. There's also been benefits shown to drinking at least 1 cup when you wake up and when you go to bed. But I know for me and things that I've studied, it's very beneficial if you can drink up to 1 litre when you wake up before breakfast to help flush out all the impurities which your body has been expelling throughout the night. Yeah, because you're going such a long time as well throughout the night where you're not going to be drinking anything. So, yeah, drinking a little bit before bed. But obviously, you need to monitor as well to your own needs and, yeah.
So then also that would be a bad idea.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah, you'd get dehydrated much quicker during the night. So you are going to be dehydrated when you wake up because you have gone so long without drinking water, and that's why it's important when you wake up. The best thing is to have a drink of water. I think it's kilos. Sorry, I should have converted that. Last time I did this presentation was in Australia.
I have another question.
Yeah.
I'm not picking on you, but as you say these things, the question comes to my mind. So, do you know at what time would be best to drink juices?
Well, from what I've read, it's better to stay away from juices and other liquids which aren't water completely, unless it's something like maybe a herbal tea, just because of the effect that it has on the body and because it's so, I know people do juice fast. We actually do that at the Lifestyle Centre. So if you're having a juice fast and that's all you're having, then you'd have the juice at meal times. So you would have it in place of a meal.
So in other words, I'm getting that if in case if I drink smoothies, I have to be careful how I drink smoothies.
But yeah, that's true. Again, smoothie is kind of like a meal because it's not just, like you've got all the fiber in it as well that's been blended up, right? So that is like a meal. So you'd have that at a meal time. And then your water is drank half an hour before that, and then after digestion's complete, so like 2.5 hours after you've eaten. Yeah.
Because now that I think about it, even when you're probably breaking it out, you still go through a dehydration process because the water has to be involved to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Just treat your juice like a meal, and you will actually, it should be fine.
No, because because sometimes when I drink smoothie, I don't see it as a meal. Yeah, but now that
Exactly. But you generally take smoothie. I've seen you, brother, you take it like it's a meal.
yeah. You see, one of the things with me, my metabolism works fast.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the questions I was going to ask is at the beginning, you had the desserts and everything that they had there and how much calories. I never had a problem with calories because what I was going to ask is, can I eat as much calories as I want once I'm burning it out? Because I never had a problem with eating too much sweets or anything. I burnt it out because I played soccer and I played soccer for hours.
Mm-hmm.
And even afterwards, I was always active, so I always burn out whatever I eat. So is it okay that I can eat sweet stuff as long as I burn them out? The problem is if in case I'm not burning it out, then it creates a problem.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yes, now I understand that it's about glory of God. But when I did it at that time, it was all about how you get the fuel. Once you have the fuel to run on, that was it. So when I ate those things, um, I had the fuel and I accomplished all what I had to accomplish. I was able to move and do whatever I did. But I guess eventually it catches up
Mm-hmm.
as
Yeah.
you grow older. Yeah,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I,
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's right. Thank you, everyone, for your contribution. We'll keep moving as I know time's ticking on. I don't want to keep you all here too long. So this is a scan showing the normal brain and then a brain that has been dehydrated. So even only at 1% dehydration, you're likely to have a 5% decrease in your cognitive function. So it is very easy to get 1% dehydration. Now, I'm a student and I know how difficult it is to concentrate on my studies sometimes. And so our brains, this is what we use to communicate with God, right? We want it to be the best and sharpest that it possibly can be. And so drinking water is just one way that we can help to improve that connection and help us with everything we do, whether it's study, work, whatever we're doing. All right. So the principle is to try and to eliminate drinking other beverages because as we've discussed before, what the effect that they have on the body is, even though we can think that it might be healthy, but is often highly concentrated and excessive, whereas in water, God's given us everything that we need for our bodies to remain hydrated. So try to eliminate drinking other beverages and increase your water consumption. And why is water not promoted more? Because it can't be patented. Nobody can actually sell it. Do you have something to say? Oh, okay.
Agreed.
Yeah. All right. Next one. Does this photo look familiar to anybody? So it's in the time of the Spanish flu. It's an open-air hospital. So back in the early 1900s. Now, this open-air hospital that was exposed to the fresh air and sunlight was proved to be extremely successful in treating and also curing and preventing the Spanish flu, where millions of people were dying from it. People here actually were able to recover, and the medical staff, they were actually prevented from actually catching the flu. So our next principle is sunshine. In Genesis chapter 1, verse 16, says, God made two great lights, the greater light to rule the day and the lesser light to rule the night. He made the stars also. So sunshine, is it a friend or is it a foe? It's a friend. God created it for us. In the beginning, he provided ample sunshine for man. He placed man in a garden outside to be exposed to the sun. He didn't put him inside a house. Now, if we think about what we're told, the impact of sunshine on us today, was it cruel for God to put him outside? No, it was for a blessing. It was for a reason. So the Spanish flu. So in 1918 to 1919, the Spanish flu outbreak killed between 50 to 100 million people, which is a lot of people. Now, contrary to the conventional view, evidence suggests that there were preventative and curative methods. So many people said there was absolutely no cure. But staff and patients from the open-air hospital, which we saw just a couple of slides earlier, in Boston were spared from the worst of the outbreak. Patients were treated outside where fresh ventilation and sunlight were in abundance, substantially reduced deaths and infection. And we're finding out now that sunlight is very effective in killing many viruses.
What's happening there? That was happening during the summertime, that they were outside.
I'm not sure. That's a good question. I would say so. All right. Vitamin D is essential to the function of your immune system. So it is once again one of those things which is highly effective at helping us with not only the common cold but also different influenzas and specifically, I guess crucial to our time, COVID-19. So sunlight can be used as well in treating that and also preventing it. So vitamin D is generated when our skin is exposed to the sunlight, and then it is synthesized from cholesterol in the blood. So therefore, harmful levels of cholesterol are actually lowered by vitamin D. And then the blood vessels are able to be cleaned out, the blood becomes cleaner, blood pressure becomes normalized, and heart illness is prevented, all by an adequate amount of vitamin D. Now, absorbing vitamin D also helps to regulate calcium levels, so thus preventing different diseases like rickets and osteoporosis. So it actually allows our body to be able to absorb and store calcium in a healthy way. Today we know that vitamin D also plays an important role as a steroid in gene modulation. So this means that vitamin D can help to turn on those health-promoting genes and turn off those bad genes, such as the ones which cause cancer or can turn into cancer. It's an antioxidant. It's been shown to help produce different cancer levels, and it also can help to keep you happy. So especially in seasons when it is often very dark and grey for a lot of the time, some of us can suffer from SAD or seasonal affective disorder. Getting sunlight or having blue light therapy can really help us to regulate and maintain a happy mood. Yes.
That's vitamin D or just sunlight? That's a quality of vitamin D?
Vitamin D can?
That actually affects the mood.
Yes, but also the light as well, which we'll talk about a bit later, the blue light.
And I have one other question. When you said that cholesterol, is it saying, I don't know if you saw that, is it saying like LDL cholesterol is what it's looking for in contrast to LDL, or just cholesterol in general?
I think cholesterol in general. I haven't looked into the specific types, but that would be, yeah. Because I know that it does help to decrease those harmful levels of the harmful type of cholesterol. So, yeah.
So in other words, vitamin D is like a facilitator, facilitating vitamin because it makes it work with everything.
Yeah.
Is it like a mediator or anything like that?
Yeah, I would say so. In the Bible, sunlight is often associated with healing. So in Ecclesiastes it says, "Truly the light is sweet and pleasant thing for the eyes to behold the sun." And in Malachi it says, "But unto you that fear my name shall the sun, S-U-N, of righteousness arise with healing in his wings." So sunlight and healing go together. And also in a spiritual sense, Christ as the Son of righteousness, he is the one who provides us healing from our sins. So again, it can be difficult to get enough sunlight when it's grey and dark all the time, but even going outside and getting that light, you can still get some vitamin D from that. And if you try and get at least 20 to 30 minutes outside in the light a day is very beneficial. It can help to regulate your sleep and wake cycles. And on days when there isn't enough sun, you can actually use blue light therapy to help as well. So you can purchase, we have it at the health centre back at home, a special light which lets out blue light, which has a similar effect to sunlight. And this helps to produce serotonin, which is the happy hormone. So it's a highly effective treatment for depression. Okay. Moving on. So what is the cause of most of the issues in society today? What comes to mind? Anger? Stress? Being indoors, yeah. Definitely. What was it you said, Pastor? Intemperance. Right. So I would agree with all of these things, but lack of self-control or lack of temperance, Ellen White tells us, is one of the things which leads to the issues in society today. Drugs and alcohol, unable to practice healthy lifestyle and diet, addictions, caffeine, obesity, which is the leading cause of death. All of these things are linked to intemperance. So the spirit of prophecy actually tells us that morality, health, and godliness is being sacrificed on the altar of not offending people and validating their chosen way of expressing their identity. So children are not being brought up with the boundaries which they need to make healthy lifestyle choices. And she says that these problems in society all stem back to the home influences. self-control, not being taught and not being modeled in the home. So I guess the question comes down, sometimes we need to make a choice. Am I going to have this thing in moderation, or do I need to completely abstain from it? Now, studies have started to actually promote health benefits of drinking a small amount of alcohol. But we know that it's clear that what can start as just a little bit so often leads to a habit which cannot be broken and which can be completely devastating to the body and the mind. So temperance is not always just about moderation. Sometimes total abstinence can be the better choice, such as in the case of alcohol. So it's about balance and control, having balance and being able to control something. What about caffeine? So this can be a difficult one. Is moderation better or total abstinence? So studies have shown that caffeine has far-reaching effects on the brain. So it unbalances our brain by influencing the production of 3 chemicals. So I hope I don't lose you in this part. But the 3 chemicals are adenosine, dopamine, and acetylcholine. So caffeine weakens adenosine, so one of these chemicals, which is the brain's brakes, which causes you to be able to control. So it's associated with anxiety neurosis, psychosis, and schizophrenia, because caffeine impacts your ability to be able to control your thoughts and your impulses. It also increases dopamine, which is also linked to schizophrenia, caffeine-induced delirium, anorexia, and other mental illnesses. Increases in dopamine decrease the frontal lobe function and the blood flow, which is also a characteristic of depression. Now, in response to caffeine, the brain actually starts to alter its production of these different chemicals, including reduction in acetylcholine. Now, this contributes to caffeine dependency because the brain comes to expect caffeine in its environment. And so it actually alters its structure and function accordingly. So if you're not getting that caffeine, then you have a brain which is expecting it. And then that is what actually causes that feeling that you need to have more. So that's what causes the addiction. Now, a lot of people say that in the morning without coffee, they feel like they're running on half throttle. That's because their brain has learnt to expect it. And sometimes it can also, if someone is trying to get off coffee, they're going to experience that feeling of half throttle. So headache and fatigue, because the brain's chemistry has been disrupted by caffeine. It's become caffeine dependent.
Time factor that if you drink coffee over a period of time, that is what you're going to end up with. Because, okay, if I start drinking coffee, then the brain starts to depend on it. So every morning I'm looking to drink coffee so that the brain can get back whatever feeling it wants. Now, at what point in time does it break down?
That's a good question.
How much time does it take? Because a lot of people go to work and every morning they're in the coffee. So am I to expect that in 10 years' time about 1 million people go to break down, or all the people who drank coffee, who started drinking coffee, and when they're 10-year rich, these million people who have been drinking coffee for 10 years, all of them are going to have mental breakdown.
Yeah. Yeah, so how well you're doing the other principles of God's laws of health are going to impact that as well. And you asked the question, like, why aren't you seeing more people who are mentally deranged because of coffee? Maybe in some of our circles we aren't seeing it, but there is a huge increase in mental health or mental illness at this time, which I think we're seeing the effects of choices which have been made maybe a generation before us. And I'm sure that a generation after us, we're going to see an even greater increase in some of these things as well. Ministry of Healing tells us that the only security for any soul is right thinking. So the key to staying temperate lies in our minds. If we can learn to discipline our mind, that's when we'll have won the battle against intemperance. In 2 Corinthians chapter 5 verse 17 says, casting down imaginations and every high thing that exalts itself against the knowledge of God, and bringing into captivity every thought to the obedience of Christ. So Christ is the one who's able to help us take control of our minds, to bring each of our thoughts into captivity to him. All right, now I know we've been going for an hour, so I don't want to keep you guys here too long. What should we do? Stop now or keep going? Okay. Yeah, this one's a really interesting study. So emotions and immunity. So in this study, 5,600 participants were studied, and the question was asked, what is the best way to control your emotions? And there were 5 different things that they could do. Well, the first one was not to do anything. The second one was to do yoga. Third, Eastern meditation. Fourth, prayer. And fifth, Bible study. So out of all of these things, Bible study and prayer were found to effectually help someone to be able to control their emotions. And Eastern meditation acted as a placebo only, so it didn't actually really help. So it comes back to God being the one who's able to help us with our temperance, both in our minds, in our bodies, with our emotions. And this is one of my favourite promises in Isaiah 26 verse 3. Thou wilt keep him in perfect peace, whose mind is stayed on thee, because he trusts in thee. And God's promised that if we ask for help, he's able to give us the power to overcome any addiction, any intemperance in our lives. In women? What, emotions? Maybe. Oh dear. All right. Who's heard of forest bathing? Okay, so deep breathing has become fashionable, especially over in Japan. So forest bathing has become a popular practice over there, and they call it taking in nature through your senses. Increases your health and your happiness. And this is linked to oxygen or air. So air contributes to the health of every single organ in the body. Blood that lacks oxygen passes through the brain and other organs without having any vitality, which is the life-giving effect. So unclean air, such as may be found in rooms without thorough ventilation, does not have enough oxygen to supply the blood's needs. So air is crucial. Fresh air is crucial to our health. So what is healthy air? The best air is oxygen-rich and negatively charged. So an atom can be either negatively or positively charged. And negatively charged ions have more electrons than protons. And a negative charge in the air is usually attached to oxygen. So air that has a negative charge is oxygen-rich. So this is the best air for us. Yeah, true. Yeah.
Because the trees that he once converted the carbon dioxide back to oxygen and making it pure again, so
That's right. Yeah. And it's not just the forest as well, which we're going to have a look at. Like there are other places where negatively charged ions are in abundance. So that, I'm not sure exactly why that is, but this is just something that science has found. So negatively charged ions are found near moving water. It's like oceans, waterfalls and rivers, in the forest, during rainfall, after a thunderstorm, particularly places which have just been struck by lightning. So,
Because we know the lightning is a charge.
yeah,
Now, close to the sea is salt water, and then the river is fresh water. So, I'm starting to see the connection.
yeah. Yeah, it's very interesting. So these negative ions, they all congregate in the outdoors, specifically in the wild, natural, untouched outdoors. So it's going to be up to 10 times better, the air out there, than it is sitting in your office or in your bedroom. And it's particularly difficult because, especially when the weather's cold and we're heating our houses, to get that fresh air inside. So these ions are also called happy ions because when we breathe them in, they contribute to us having better moods, more energy, better sleep, and an overall sense of well-being. So what are some ways that we can get more air? So there's a couple of tips here. So the first one is go outdoors. Intentionally take deep breaths. This is one thing which I'm very guilty of, is shallow breathing. So the best thing is your stomach moving up and down when you breathe, or is it just your chest? So when we breathe deeply, our stomach should be expanding, not our chest. Third, leave a window open. I know this is hard again when it's really cold, but if possible, leave a window open. Try and step outside every hour for it to take some deep breaths. And another thing is grow indoor plants because that's going to attract those negatively charged ions. Yes, yeah, throughout the day. And if you're able to sleep in a room with a window open, that is highly beneficial as well. Yeah, enough just to let in a bit of fresh air. Yeah.
The heating system in the houses, there is a vent where the heat does not come out. It's called cold air return. So when you don't open your house, all it does is that when your furnace comes on, it recirculates the same air that you use in the house, and that is what keeps on going on and on. So you're actually breathing over and over the same air that you have been breathing all through the house. So if you never open your house, then no fresh air comes in. That's why I think the Spirit of Prophecy mentioned that even during winter time, you should leave a window crack because the fresh air makes a difference.
Yep. All right, nearly there. Rest. So, how long do you think we could go without sleeping before we die? Yes.
Without sleeping,
Yes.
I don't know. At one point in time, I think I went probably 2 days without sleeping.
Mm-hmm.
And I cannot, I'm trying to think what bothered me. I think what bothered me more is that the doctor was trying to convince me that nothing was wrong with me. I don't mind if he had told me he doesn't know what is wrong with me. Because I sleep sometimes on Fridays for 12 hours straight. And then all of a sudden, I'm not sleeping I don't mind one night, but 2 going on 3 nights. You can't tell me something is not wrong. And I think that bothers me more than, because I think it created an anxiety in me because I wasn't getting the answer in that the doctor was more trying to tell me that nothing is wrong with me.
Mhm. Yep, so true. Oh. Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. Yes, sleep is absolutely essential. 11 days is the world record.
11 days,
Yes, without sleeping.
so you would actually die.
Mhm. Yeah. So the record is um, the longest somebody has ever lived without sleeping is 11 days before passing away. And lab rats actually die of sleep deprivation before they die of starvation. Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. All right. So, a recent study showed us that regularly getting less than 7 hours of sleep affects our immunity. So, we're 3 times more likely to get sick. Less sleep actually increases the risk of being overweight. Less sleep shortens the lifespan. So, quality sleep is essential for a strong immune system because during our sleep, body circulation increases, oxygen levels rise, the brain tissue absorbs more amino acids. It's actually a restorative process during sleep. So this is when, especially during REM, which is the phase of deep sleep in our cycle, this is when the most intense neural activity actually occurs. And so our memory starts getting consolidated and our body starts to work on repairing different parts in the body which have been damaged during the day. And so if we don't get our sleep, then those restorative processes and consolidating processes aren't able to occur. And that's why we start to get trembling and tremors and why we feel like we can't think straight because the body hasn't been able to replenish those things which have been taken.
Some people work at night and they sleep during the day.
Mm.
So, is there a difference between quality of sleep or just regular, any sleep is okay?
Yeah, there is. And this is something that I actually want to study more into. I don't know all the details behind it, but I do know that, and Ellen White also counsels that the hours before midnight are the most important hours of sleep that we get, like twice as important as the ones that we get after midnight. So that's something that I want to study more, but yeah, and science is also proving that too. So how much sleep do we need? Newborns actually need 16 to 18 hours. Would that be true? Yes. Young children need 10 to 12 hours. Teens need 9 hours. I've got a teenage sister, and this is definitely true. If she doesn't get her 9 to 10 hours, then she is completely whacked. Adults, 8 hours. And some people think that the need for sleep continues to decrease with age, but actually senior citizens need just as much as teenagers. And apparently women need more than men, which is interesting as well. So not getting adequate rest can increase our mortality risk for a number of reasons. Our health, and also when unable to make good choices, which can lead to risks, whether it's on the road or in other areas of our life. But there's a 21% risk in women, high risk of mortality with less sleep in women, and 26% in men. So how can we promote a healthy sleeping cycle? Some of us struggle to get good rest and get an ample amount of sleep. Well, there's some tips which can help us. So the first one is turn off lights, so sleep in a completely dark room. And even turning off the LED lights a couple of hours before you're going to go to sleep. So the soft, warmer lights are best to help promote or get your body ready for rest. So avoiding those electronic devices, because that keeps your mind awake. Number 3, stick to a schedule. So our body works on a schedule. It likes a process which is having meals at the same time, going to bed and getting up at the same time. Relax and get comfortable. Say no to drugs. Watch what you eat and when, because if you eat late at night, that's going to get your digestion moving, which is going to keep your body awake. Being active during the day promotes good sleep at night. And also being thankful, because that helps to calm our mental processes as well, which some of us stay awake because of overthinking. Yes?
And I have been doing it and it works. I used to see it in catalogs, and most of the older folks in earlier times, their heads, they had a head covering. I'm sleeping with a tam now, and I'm sleeping so much nicer. I don't know why, but because I was questioning it, I looked at some old photos and I see the women they made their own thing, head covering, and the men had it too. And I decided to start covering my head, and then I find I sleep better when my head is covered.
Well, there you go. You have to give that a try.
So try it and see.
Yeah, why not?
We'll be able to give a testimony sometime whether it works or not.
All right, try it this week. You can convene next Sabbath and see how it went. All right, and a Sabbath rest. So our bodies are not designed to work around the clock. God built it into us to have a rest on the Sabbath day. As we can see in Genesis chapter 2, verse 3. Then God blessed the seventh day and sanctified it, because in it he rested from all his work which he created and made. All right, last one. Where does the process of disease begin? Ellen White says that 90% of diseases begin in our mind. So disease actually most of the time begins in our mind, and many studies these days are coming out and showing that there's an intimate connection between the brain and the body. So moving on to our very last health principle, trust. So there's a law which is in our bodies and in nature which says for every effect, there must be a cause. So let's have a look at the example here. So we've got a pot of burnt vegetables, we have someone who has a headache, and we have a car that's obviously been in an accident and has been dented. Now, where the effect is, you can't have the cause in the same place. So can you look at a burnt vegetable to find what caused it to be burnt? Is the fire in the vegetable? No, it's not. Can you look at the metal of a dented car to find out how it was dented? You can't. The same thing with our bodies. We can't always, sometimes, but we can't always look at the place where the effect is to find the cause. So looking at somebody who has a headache, you cannot find in that effect, in that pain, that's not going to actually tell you what the cause of that is. So let's have a look at an example. So let's say the piano is our body, and music that comes out of the piano is our health. So sometimes it's lovely music, sometimes there's a few wrong notes played, sometimes the tune is irrecognizable. That's how bad our health is. I want you to imagine that there's a few wrong notes being played in a song. How can we fix that if there's a few wrong notes being played? Can we fix it just by trying to tune the piano so that when you hit that note it sounds right? No, we can't. It will sound great for that song, but as soon as you try and play a different song, it's going to sound even worse than before. So this is what we do often when we try to treat the symptoms. We go to the place where the cause is and we treat it. We have a headache, we take a Panadol to kill the pain. This is treating the symptoms, it's not actually treating the cause. So what do we need to do? We need to look at the cause. What is actually making the wrong sound? What is causing the wrong sound to come out of the piano? So the keys. The keys are connected to the body of the piano and are telling it what sounds to make. So with our health, there's an organ which is connected to our physical body, and it's what gives the body the commands to function, and that organ is our brain. So then, is our brain the cause of disease, or is there another element which we have missed? So once again, the brain is just an organ of our physical body. There is something else that helps our brains to function correctly. This is when we get to the pianist. The pianist is the one who's playing the keys or playing the brain. There is something that governs how our brain functions. This represents a part of us which is not physical, it's spiritual. So our spirit is what connects with God. It's our thoughts. So our thoughts are spiritual information. And it's our thoughts which actually, so it begins with our thoughts, and then our thoughts are what tells our brain what it's going to do, and then our brain gives command to the rest of our body. So studying the creation accounts and also in Spirit of Prophecy, we find that we don't just have a physical element, we have a spiritual element as well, and the two parts are combined. And this is what actually they work together to bring about the health in our body. So if our thoughts are healthy, our body is going to be healthy in most cases. As we know, Ellen White says 90%. So the body tells us if our spirit or our thoughts are actually functioning correctly, the same way the piano tells us if the pianist can actually play properly, if the pianist is functioning correctly. So thoughts generate electricity in our brain. And this electricity goes to our nerves, and then our nerves go to each of our cells and tells them how to function. Does that make sense? So our cells are actually, their function is determined by our thoughts, because it goes thoughts to our nerves down to our cells. I love this verse in Proverbs because it talks about a healthy spirit or healthy thoughts which are connected to God. It says, the spirit of a man will sustain him or sustain his infirmity, but a wounded spirit, who can bear it? So how can we have a spirit or healthy thoughts that will sustain us in infirmity? By trusting in God. When we aren't trusting in God, we're actually trusting in ourselves. That's the only other option. We can't trust in, if we're not trusting God, then the default is automatically trusting in ourselves. And to trust in ourselves means that we believe that we can supply our own needs for life if our focus is on self. But if we're trusting in God, we're taking from him everything that we need for life. And that's spiritual and physical. He nourishes us spiritually and physically. Ellen White says that he is the only source of life. And that's who Jesus took from. Jesus took from the Father, who was the life source. And just as Jesus lived in a complete trusting relationship with the Father, so we can as well. And he's who's what's going to give us everything that we need for life. And godliness, that's what we're told in the Bible. So here is our prescription for healing. Our Saviour's words, "Come unto me and I will give you rest," are a prescription for the healing of physical, mental and spiritual ills. Though men have brought suffering upon themselves by their wrongdoing, he regards them with pity. In him they may find help. He will do great things for those who trust in him. If human beings would open the windows of the soul heavenward in appreciation of the divine gifts, a flood of healing virtue would flow in. So how can we learn to trust in Jesus. Sometimes it's easy to say, oh, just have faith, just trust God. Well, in the Bible it says faith comes by hearing, and hearing by the word of God. So spending that time with Jesus every day is how we develop that trusting relationship. This is how you get to know anybody, is by spending time with them. This is the most important of all the health laws, because as we've just learned, our thoughts are what controls the rest of our health. So the benefits of all the others are fully experienced when we are trusting in God and He's helping us to control our thoughts. And that's the end of the presentation. Thank you so much for your input and for listening. Sorry it went a bit long. Let's have a prayer to close. Dear Father in heaven, we thank you so much for these laws which you've given to us, and thank you that you're teaching us in many different ways how we can live a healthy lifestyle, not just so that our physical health can be strong, but also so that our spiritual health can be strong too. And I pray that you'll please bless everybody here and their families as well. Please be with them as they go to their homes. And I just thank you so much for this time we've been able to spend together. And we pray in Jesus' name, amen. Thank you.